My name is Rebecca Johnson. I'm 23. I'm currently in the North Carolina National Guard, and I'm a second lieutenant, which is an officer. Me being a woman in the military is definitely an experience. You have to constantly prove yourself. You're working with enlisted people who have been in the military for 20 something years, and you're coming in as being brand new. You're making the decisions. There really are some setbacks, but honestly, it makes you want to be a better person because you are pushing and you're striving to be better than other people, and it makes you a more driven person. It's not a burden being a woman in the military. I've been lucky, I haven't been deployed or anything, but I've done all that crazy living out in the woods and stuff with the guys, and I love it. I love the camaraderie of being in the military. Currently, I'd like to go into the prosthetics field. What led me into the field was seeing how soldiers were coming back from war, and they were losing their limbs and they were needing these prosthetics. And what really drove me was how they could come back and they can get a prosthetic limb and they can go back on active duty status. I just thought that was the coolest thing. They have this horrible setback of losing a limb, and then they can get right back up and they can gain back their independence. It is just something that is so incredible that you can give somebody that kind of ability.
My name is Kara. I am 25 years old. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I met my husband when I was 19, and he was in the Air Force, and he deployed right away, so we pretty much built our relationship during his deployment. Thankfully, he never had to go to war, so he came home, everything was perfect. We got engaged about a year later and married after that. We had a child together, and we had pretty much the perfect life. He was highly respected in his career field. We had a lot of friends. We were both active with like military functions, fundraisers. I was friends with all the wives, and our life was pretty much too good to be true. After my daughter was born, he got in trouble with the military, and he was sentenced 33 months to military prison. And after he was taken away, it felt like more than half of me was ripped away from me, gone, dead. We honestly didn't think this would happen. We thought the case would get dropped because in our eyes there was no crime, but the military pushed for it to set an example, in my opinion. So with that, we lost a bunch of our friends. I was pretty much shunned out of the military community. It wasn't necessarily the military that shunned me, it was more of the wives that I thought were my good friends. A few did stick by my side, which was amazing, and I owe that to God for me. And his main boss, always the first shirt, always took care of my needs and made sure I was okay. And so now my husband's gone, and it's hard because my daughter is a toddler, so being a single parent, like I always knew in my heart there would be a time he would have to leave, deploy for months at a time, and I was prepared for it, but this isn't a deployment. He went from a staff sergeant all the way back to a basic airman as one of the punishments. So the pay grade dropped tremendously. Thankfully, the Air Force is giving me an allowance. The good thing that came out of this experience would have to be my husband finding his faith. I've always been a Christian my entire life, and he always believed in a God, but not necessarily was a Christian. And during this experience, and then, when he was under investigation, he found Jesus and became baptized, and always said to me, this has to happen to him to find God, to find Jesus. So with this whole experience, I feel like it's affected my feminism and a positive way, because before I was, the housewife that, felt like, yeah, I did as much as I could by holding the house down and stuff and making sure my husband was happy. And once he was gone, though, at first I was like, yeah, I'm not going to survive this. But then I found this strength inside me that I had no idea existed. I became two parents for my daughter, and not only was I holding the house down anymore, I was also becoming a provider for my daughter and I.
My name is Asha Green. I'm 21 years old and I was born in Kuskel, Germany. I'm the daughter of First Sergeant Green, who previously served infantry in the Army. So growing up in an environment where your father is in the military is definitely hard, just because he's gone all the time. So when you have to find yourself when your father's supposed to be there to guide you and making sure that the boys stay away, it's kind of, you're lacking that that feedback from your dad. So I mostly depended on my mom, and since my mom was the sole provider for a little bit, because my dad was always the one in Iraq and away from the family, she kind of was absent as well. Me and my brother, who's only 2 years younger than me, had to kind of balance each other, balance everything off of each other and figure out how to survive in a social aspect with other children and with all the moving and things like that, and even schoolwork. It's dependent on the teacher. It actually strengthened everything as far as my confidence within me. Fast forward to college, I went to USF and decided that I wanted to do ROTC and skip over the community college thing, because my father, watching him go through everything and seeing how he worked and all his hard work, it actually made me want to be him. It made me want to live his light and do all the right things like he did. When I got to ROTC, I found out that it is way more than what they thought, but what I thought it was. It was a lot of hard work, it's a lot of 6 a.m. mornings, it's a lot of late nights, a lot of tasks that aren't involved in schoolwork. And then I had to rethink, is this what I really wanted to do? So I started modeling a prestige modeling troupe. What I learned about myself is that I'm more of that type of person that just likes to be confident and motivating other women to be as confident in themselves as I am. So that's why I decided to do modeling over ROTC. So being a military brat has definitely made me more of a well-rounded person. It has definitely made me more focused, and I'm able to network with people, and I'm also a lot more caring when it comes to family ties.
My name's Ashley Stevens. I'm 23 years old and I'm from Tampa, Florida. My husband is a Petty Officer 3rd Class Aviation Technician for the United States Navy. Being a Navy wife has definitely had an effect on my feminism by feeling very dismissed. I felt the need to put an extra effort to justify who I was. I had many people, and when I would tell them that I was a Navy wife, they would definitely just brush it off, especially being in that area, in the town. They hear it all the time, and they already have this stigma and this idea, and they just classify you as just being so reliant on them, and you're just almost like not human. My husband being gone has affected me in so many ways, more than just one. It's definitely put a test on our relationship as a whole. Communication, it comes down to emailing and just testing your trust and everything like that. And I'm sure everybody knows that and can relate, whether military or not. But I feel like it just does it to a whole nother level of it. Because at the end of the day, if it's not there or something happens, you can't really handle and attack the situation. You still have to deal with it through email or some by letter or not at all, which I'm sure can be super frustrating. Another way is that I always say to people that I always feel like I'm I have like an imaginary husband. It's up to you to remind yourself that you're almost like in a relationship. He's gone all the time. So yes, you have the title, but when nobody, and I don't have kids to distract, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I always believed. I have kids that would remind me of my husband or something, I don't have that. I don't have any kids. So for me, it's quiet, it's empty. And I can go crazy if I were to always think that way. And, that can definitely take a toll on me and my mentality and just like the heartache. Personally, I say being a Navy wife, I unfortunately see it in a negative light because I'm sure everybody knows and jumps into the military for all the benefits that it can provide. And sure, it can bring me a home, it can bring me, like a good life, everything's taken care of, and set me up for the best picture. But the picture is without him. So how is that really rewarding at the end of the day?
I'm Vicky Smith, and I'm originally from Mississippi, and I'm 54 years old. I was in the United States Navy serving as a boatswain's mate. I got out as an E5, and that was pretty good for a black female even back then. I was one of the first black females to operate the Liberty boat. I served in the United States Army Reserve. I was a laundry and bath specialist there in the field mostly, and I did basically laundry and other stuff for the guys coming in the field. And I was an E4 there. I had to go down a rank because I went into the reserve. Being a black female in the military affected me in more negative ways than it did positive. I joined to kind of see the world, go to school and all of that, but I found out quickly being black, being a female, and having a pretty, even at 17, having a decent understanding of feminism, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. They counted me as being less, even though I was one of the smartest ones there and didn't have to sleep with anybody to get my rank. And that didn't go over well. And it was just a hard time, period. It was at some point it became a very dark period in my life due to the military sexual trauma experienced both in the United States Navy and the United States Army Reserve. And I think that I'm pretty open-minded as far as people, having grown up around different people. But when you're counted as less than and when things are swept under the rug, it can affect your life. And it affected my life really, really in a negative way for a long time. I wouldn't go outside. I wouldn't talk to people. I had a real distrust of just the authority, period, because the guys that sexually traumatized me, they were authority figures. So I have, even today, I don't like being in a closed space with a guy, and I would prefer to just kind of like, I don't like anybody in my personal space, but at the time, the military, I felt they owned me, and there wasn't too much that I could say. So it affected me where I ended up being in the hospital quite a few times just from the mental stress, the depression, and everything. And so that was after I gotten out. And going from the military life to the civilian life, which is a totally different world, I just wanted to do a lot of volunteer work, prison ministry, unwed mothers, kind of like preach to people and see how they ended up in the situations that they ended up in. I've done prison ministry for about 20 years. And it's basically if I can just reach one person, preach or teach to that one person about changing their ways, then maybe the prisons wouldn't be so full. I'm not married at the time because I just don't feel like I can have a guy trying to control me, and that's all stemming from the things that happen in the military. I don't want to sound like I'm using that as an excuse, but it has a lot to do with it. It took me 14 years to become a 100% disabled veteran, and the fight was long, it was hard, plenty of tears were shed. And so I basically volunteer when I can, and if I can't, I found out that I'm not going to do anything I don't have to do these days.